Today, every day, small cap investors visit Agoracom knowing this is the day to discover the world's next great company, to have their dreams come true. That's why I take to the open road, to find them, to tell their stories, to engage them, to bring them to life, because they want to connect with you from your office, your phone, your home, anywhere. Agoracom, find your dream.
Welcome to CEO Interviews, a production of Agoracom in which we take the time to speak with small cap executives about what's going on at their companies. With us today, we've got a unique situation. First, it's our Boxing Day special. We've never done one on Boxing Day, but we've got good reason. Two, we've got multiple people in on this interview, so let me tell you who's on here. First, from St. George's Echo Mining, we got Frank Dumas. He's president and CEO of the company. We've also got Enrico de Cesare. He's director. From Iconic Minerals, we've got Richard Kern, who's president and CEO, and Katura Nath, who's vice president of corporate development. St. George's trades on the CSE under the stock symbol SX for our friends in the US, SXOOF, and for our friends in Germany on Frankfurt under 85G1. Iconic Minerals, likewise, on the venture exchange under ICM in the US, BVTEF, and again on Frankfurt under YQGB. Everyone, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
All right, multiple people. So St. George's, first question's going out to you. This was originally supposed to be a year-end summary and looking forward to 2018. However, the company received an important report from a third-party independent source on Friday that's kind of changed the nature of this conversation. Let's talk about what you received, and then we'll get into questions about it.
Well, we got the first stage report from an independent contractor, which is the characterization report regarding Iconic's Bonney material. And that report definitely brought up, let's say, the intensity on our side, or help us pass a very big confidence. About a few weeks ago, we were hopeful that we could get a patentable process. Now we're convinced we can get at least one and maybe more element patent.
And what does it mean for Bonney in terms of the material? There was something there about it also means you're able to deal with the material much easier as well, I believe.
Well, the material, and it's a bit surprising, the material is a lot simpler than we thought. We've been processing actually characterizing the material and then conceptually passing it through different known technology, and we had some agreeable surprise. We're very positive in terms of success of this whole endeavor.
Now you're talking about getting over a hump. Is that economic, environmental, or is it both?
Let's say it's both and more. It ties into a lot more positive thing that we were expecting. There's byproducts there that we were not aware of that are actually sellable byproduct. And I could probably leave the floor to Enrico to talk a little bit more about the details thereon. But we're very happy there in terms of the whole situation.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get to Enrico in a second after we speak to Richard. But I want to make sure we get the big parts. The last part is you mentioned it, and my job here is to drag it out because Frank, you're almost being a little gun shy about this. But patents, what is it about this report that suddenly has you talking about more patents?
Well, let's say it just add to other tasks we were running in the background. So it just came and tied in and probably gave us some answers that were on the edge, like some problematic we had on the edge of the what we were working on, and that report kind of answers those questions, or give us an awakening of some sort.
Frank, safe to say that you're going to be issuing a press release about this in the morning, but it was important for you to actually speak to your shareholders tonight about how important it is from a layman's term, because it doesn't translate in the press release, but it does translate when you're talking to everybody at home.
Well, definitely. There's one element, though, that we're still in a situation where we need to protect the intellectual property until we can file for the patent, and that's going to come in a very short order. Like, we're looking at this in middle January, and there's also the fact that we have other disclosure steps and other additional tests that we need to do to be disclosed in the according to the art of the rule of the arts, or the art of the rules. But we're very happy.
Richard, let's switch gears and take it over to you. You've been credited with a lot of discoveries in North America and Australia, and now you've got Bonney Clara that you're sitting on. Before we get into details about maybe the geology and the size of Bonney Clara, talk to us about what are the implications of St. George's progress on Iconic and specifically Bonney Clara?
Well, I'm very excited to hear what St. George has been able to do so far. As I think a lot of our audience is aware, Bonney Clara is a very large resource, but it's lithium in the sediments. And until we get an economic process to get the lithium out of the sediments, it's just a very large valley and a very large resource waiting to be processed. So I couldn't be more excited.
How, now that you've got potentially the process, what do we talk about in terms of the general overview of the geology and the size of what you think you've got at Bonney Clara? Because again, if most people, it would just be some lip service, but you've got a long and distinguished career, so that comes with a lot of credibility when you speak. Maybe let us know about what is it potentially St. George might help you unlock here.
Okay, well, the work to date at Bonney Clara, the first hole we drilled in the basin went to 1,500 feet. 20 feet below the surface, we started getting highly anomalous lithium in the sediments. We average over 1,000 ppms right to the bottom of the hole, though we don't know how thick it is. The second hole was almost 2,000 feet. It was drilled 1.5 miles away in the same basin, but 1.5 miles away. Same sort of scenario, although it started a bit deeper, more like 200 feet. So you can visualize, we've got several square miles. We've got something that's 1,000, 1,500, and we don't know how thick it is. It starts near surface. It's big, but we're not prepared to put a number on it yet. We need to do a third hole and do a 43-101 resource on it.
What's your timeline on the Bonney Clara lithium project as far as 2018? What's the visibility you want to provide to everyone up there?
Well, we're very hopeful that we'll get out there in the next quarter and drill another deep hole that will allow us to do this resource report. And that will also give us a lot more sediment for the metallurgy work that's going on.
Enrico, when you hear Richard talking about, the size and the depth and how your technology can potentially help unlock all this from an economically viable point of view, what does your experience on the metallurgy side tell you about what's happening here?
So, yeah, George, that's a good question. From where I was sitting, I expected sediments from a lake to be a lot of silica and alumina. And the first characterization indicated 80% of what I call inert materials that would not leach or enter the solutions. Automatically, what that does is it creates artificially a higher lithium percentage than you had indicated in the total soil. It's easy to mine, which is what I was expecting as well. Where we see in this is a lot of favorable potential to be green and have byproducts that are saleable, like potassium for fertilizer. So I'm very encouraged by this and looking forward to playing and doing a little bit more work with the resource.
Guys, this is a question for both of you. How does this now, as a result of the report that came in on Friday, how does this open the door to other potential partnerships of this nature that you have with Iconic going forward?
Well, outside, let's say, of the area of influence, if we go to other countries, Iceland, for example, where we're active, we've had contacts with other company and other explorer. It obviously probably brought up some questions in the industry, and people have shown some interest. So we are being, some people reached out to us, and obviously now we have more answers, and we kept people at bay, I would say, for two reasons. One, we want to protect this. There's really two very important baskets of knowledge that, or black box, that we want to keep people away from. And the more you talk to people, the more you increase the chance of giving away the recipe. And so we're kept people at bay. We can probably see now when we can start to talk to these people again and actually make them sign NDAs and start to divulge the information, because we'll be in a situation where we're better protected.
Now, look, I can almost hear everybody watching, even though I technically can't, thinking, who is he talking about? So I'm going to press a little bit, and you're not going to be able to give me names, but you're smiling like a Cheshire cat. So I'm going to ask, can you at least give us a hint as to the nature of the kind of companies that have approached you now that you've got better and better information?
You have your middle of the run, middle of the road explorer that listed and not listed that actually contacted us. You also have other industry, like as funny as it is, we got contact in the geothermal industry, where companies that produce geothermal energy have a mud and clay issue. That's one of the residue of their operation, and they realize, well, we have a good lithium content in this, and there's all potentially sellable products. So instead of being an environmental issue for them, it becomes a product or a byproduct of their own operation. That's, I would say, I'd like to tell you that there's majors coming into and talking to us, but I'm not going to tell you that just yet.
Fair enough. I'm happy with the answer. I want to ask two follow-up questions, and I'm probably going to have Richard chime in as well. So first, I think is to you, Frank, and I got to play devil's advocate, because look, friends, clients or not, my job is to make sure I extract the best information possible out of you guys. And I've got to ask, a devil's advocate, what makes your technology different from what we've been hearing from other lithium developers so far in terms? Is it cost? Is it extraction rates? What makes it so different?
Well, I think I can talk, and I'll leave the floor to Enrico and Richard right after. But one major or important element to look at is that you need to compare apple with apples. We've said that we can work with hard rock, which is something that Enrico can address, but I'll address the lithium in clay and in sediment. There's a few other players that of the industry that put out results, and they're getting great results. They're getting over 90% extraction rate. But I'll be very candid with you, George. Anybody with an internet connection and the knowledge of how to research academic papers will figure out how to extract 99.9% of the lithium in a similar material.
Okay.
And in the lab, you can do that. In the bench experiments, you'll be able to do that. Question is, you really want to spend $1,000 to extract $50 worth of lithium? And that's probably where St. George is different, is we took this problematic and this challenge from two angles. One, very pragmatically, we look for an economic solution. The second one, we look for greener solution. That's always what we've been doing in the recent years, and what we want to do moving forward. Now, that means two things. We're looking at the cheapest way to extract the most amount of lithium possible. If that means we don't hit that 99% on the first pass, it doesn't mean we're not going to get to the 99.9% on the second pass, especially if that helps us reduce the cost overall. The second thing is the sellable byproducts. There's a slurry, and the punt is intended, of fertilizers and other products in the Bonney mix that are sellable, and there's farmers on the west coast of the U.S., I'll be more than happy to acquire these products. So I'll leave it up to you because I don't want to, again,
Yeah, that's a new angle.
recipe, but again, we're very happy.
Enrico, before I have Richard chime in to make sure he's fact checking you guys. You want to provide some specifics about this specifically with Iconics Bonney Clara and give us a bit of a real life example of the math?
But whenever you look at that at the deposit, you always have to apply technology based on the chemistries you have. In the Bonney Clara being a sediment and with about 80% inert, and the part that is dissolvable being, let's call it recoverable in a greener way with less chemicals, and to make byproducts that are saleable. One of the things that everybody talks about greener, but they always forget, why is it greener? Because you can sell the byproduct. If you can't sell the byproducts, you're not environmentally friendly. So in this particular case, when we look at the chemistry, it's very encouraging in the sense that I'm pretty sure we're going to make a saleable product.
I would probably add one thing, George.
Sure.
I still probably make like maybe Katura and Richard will be shy a little bit if I say that, but if you look at the current mix, you move aside 80%. So every 5 tons, 6 tons, we're making 1 ton of concentrate. We're looking at an average, and that's the other part. Is all the tests we've done, we constantly come up with 1,100, give or take, ppm of Li, of lithium, in the material. Now that's about 2,300 ppm on average of Li2O. And now if you multiply that by 5 or 6, people will argue that the rule of 3 should not apply. That gives you a general idea of where we stand on that ton pre-second phase, and strictly through mechanical enrichment. Now, that material, that ton itself, it's where we're actually going to spend the bulk of the money of the resource to extract the lithium. But we're dealing with a concentrate in a slurry form that has over 1% Li2O. And I know some of my friends, and my relationship with other hard rock explorer in the lithium sphere that are very advanced, that are in the feasibility study. And some of them will probably be jealous starting tomorrow morning to hear about that.
Richard, first, fact checking, does that all make sense to you? Because obviously you're going to be applying that to Bonney Clara. And then second, does that give you even more excitement given what they're talking about in terms of, the other implications of the technology?
Well, keep in mind, I'm the geologist here, not the geochemist, but what they've done to date sounds very logical. And I'm very hopeful that, we'll get a flow sheet and we'll drill this valley out and make this, a very large and successful lithium recovery operation.
Safe to say for you that the technology from St. George's has given you the best outlook on Bonney Clara and what lies ahead?
Absolutely. We were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because we knew we had all this lithium, but until we found a way to remove it economically, it didn't really matter. It was just a valley full of lithium.
I'll ask you a question. This is kind of off the cuff. You're obviously very well known. You've got a fantastic network. Is this the type of thing that you start picking the phone up and talking to your network of other colleagues to say, hey, if you've been stuck in the mud, pardon the pun, call St. George's because they're able to help us out and they might be able to help you out as well?
Yeah, as soon as this moves forward, St. George is not going to be able to keep up with all their requests for help because there's several valleys in the state of Nevada that have something similar to what we're looking at, in my opinion. And we all need some help getting lithium out of the sediment.
Now, you may not want to answer the following question, and I would understand that. But again, I'm trying to think of what your investors might be thinking at home. But does this technology give you the confidence to go out and potentially stake other claims and that you might not have otherwise looked at before? And you don't have to answer it. Maybe for all, that could be for competitive reasons. But I want to ask you that because, again, I like to put on the hat of the person watching at home and ask the question that they would ask you. So are you able to answer that question?
Absolutely. As a geologist, I have to be a perpetual optimist. Because I'm a perpetual optimist, I made sure that Iconic got another lithium target some time ago. So we've got more eggs in the basket.
And Richard, just so nobody at home thinks we're softballing anything here, you and I have never spoken about this. So when I asked that question, that was coming straight from me as opposed to us trying to telegraph something there, right?
Absolutely.
All right, because it just makes sense. I mean, we're all business people at the end of the day, and when you get new technology that suddenly makes things more viable, the first thing you do is say, hey, let's go look through the junk pile and see what we can find. So that's a fantastic answer, and I'm glad I got that from you, and I'm sure everyone at home is going to be glad as well. Guys, back to St. George. All right, all jets look like they're flying. What's the timeline you're expecting for development of the technology and testing in a pilot environment?
Well, the typical process is once we have the characteristics of the deposit, we'll be doing in parallel to what Richard's work is with the drilling program. We'll create a good flow sheet and we'll optimize it. We're going to be very focused on all the byproducts because that's what always kills you. Everybody always just focuses on the elements that you're after, but you've got to look at the little details that kill you, be it chemicals, energy, and the byproducts. And we'll be focusing on that over the next 6 months. We'll have a better idea by then. And that'll coincide with all the work that Richard's going to be doing on the drilling program.
Right, so in a sense, you guys are actually, Enrico, you guys are a little bit married at the hip because your progress and their progress almost moving ahead lockstep because it's almost like the first testing ground. Is that accurate to say it that way?
Well, definitely. I think that one of the elements, for example, is that I'm assuming Richard's going to get a call from us this week to get a few more buckets of that material because we ran out. But we're also going to have to run a pilot or mini pilot plant operation later on. And that the only way it can happen is either Richard goes with a backhoe on site, or we'll probably use the drill core coming out of his next drilling campaign. So in the next quarter, we'll be able to advance a lot. In parallel to that, we'll be fighting for patent. But I think that probably the big unveiling of this old plan will be with the preliminary feasibility or chemical feasibility. That should come sometimes in 2018. But that, to be able to do that, even on our part, we'll need to get the resource estimate first, and obviously we need to do drilling first. So there's time's going to compress itself a lot over the next 3 quarters.
Frank, I'm going to add a little personal touch here and say you and I have been working. I've been working close with you on St. George as far back as 2013 when I had my nationally televised show, and you were on that 2 or 3 times. You were one of the most candid, probably the most, not one of the most candid CEOs that we had on the company because you would admit your faults and you admit where you made missteps. Then came the Death Valley of 2015 that Richard, obviously you remember that as well, where it put a standstill and wiped out a lot of junior resource companies. When you reflect back now on 2017, how big of a turning point has all this been for St. George's, given what you went through to keep this company alive and get innovative and get things done without much resources other than sweat equity? What does it mean to you? What does it mean to everybody at home?
That answer is way too long for one interview. That would be a series of probably 3 nights in a row. But I would say there's so much, and that's probably, when we thought of it, we had the discussion with the people in St. George. It's like a spring, and we've had weight on it. We have weight on it as you go as far as 2014, 2015, when we made the Jolie nickel discovery. Unfortunately, we were 2 years too late. where nobody cared about nickel anymore. And the only people that called me, there's I would say an executive, because I want to give up his name, of a major who's involved in nickel, had called me on a Friday and said, you know, I don't want to call you during the market because probably you had your hands full and the phone ringing. I said, no, you're the first call I'm getting today. And that was true. Like the interest was gone. And we built up from there. And we built up with our partner, Gary Johnson, in New Zealand and Australia, on technology to extract lithium. Last year, we made a breakthrough with Enrico and Gary on some of these initiatives. Nobody cared. And we just continue moving forward. We were able to acquire Iceland resource. That was a massive milestone for me personally. I see that eventually we'll be able to explain to people how big this is. And I would say that everything at one point ties into another, and we were able to make some good progress on the lithium extraction out of clay. And in reality, for us, initially, it was more metal extraction out of clay, and lithium came after that. And to make a story short, we got Katura calling me in August saying, you still have all these contacts in the lithium business because we're looking for an extraction technology. Well, maybe we're able to accommodate you. And her timing was perfect. It was like a few days. I even thought she knew when she called. It was a few days after we had made our own breakthrough on it. So in terms of everything, like the mood has changed, our level of confidence has changed. We're getting calls. I'm getting in a day the amount of calls I used to get in a year. And
that's amazing. I can laugh about this with you. I'm not laughing at you, everybody at home. You should know that Frank and I have been working together. We're on the phone, and I'm beating the table on I need information. And Frank is saying for all those years, we're trying to make things happen. So when you tell me that, I'm laughing out of just sheer joy. You know,
George,
to know that you guys are being rewarded.
George, if you go last year about the same time, people were telling us, okay, you can talk about Leroyal lithium. It's a great lithium discovery. Talk about this. Don't talk about anything else. Please don't talk about your nickel. Please don't talk about your technology because you're going to confuse people. And then we got Iceland, and people were saying, okay, maybe you can talk a little bit about Iceland. It ties into other things where people start to say, don't talk about your lithium, just talk about Iceland. It's massive. It's crazy. And then they said, don't talk about your technology, though, because you're going to get people confused. And then now people want to talk about the technology. They want to talk about everything. And people have started to dig out even the element about the ERP software that we were working on. And they even want to talk about this. So at one point, you know, we don't have enough time in a day and day in a year. But we're in the process now of the company's cashed up. We're in the process of bringing a resource on board. I think we'll be able to deliver most of this.
And you touched on something. You opened the door, so I'm going to kick it open. For as long as I've known you, one thing, and I tell people, despite the fact that Frank looks like a defenseman from the Ottawa Senators, I actually tell people, hey, the guy's a certified genius, literally, and I say that with the utmost respect. And you always know so much about what's going on, to the point that I now know that I don't always know what you're working on. Do you have any surprises that we should be looking forward to in the coming year? Because you know people have found stuff online about your directors and things like that. So let's kind of kick that open a little bit. What can you tell us about that?
Well, first I'm going to say one thing for everyone to just make sure, a disclaimer, Certified Genius is not a national instrument 48101 term. The second part is, I would say, there's rumor out there. There's a little bit of smoke. I would say there's probably some sparks, but it's probably, you know, it's kind of the situation where there's things being done that are already related to mining, and you'll get some more clarity out of that in the next few weeks.
I'm going to ask you straight up. I'm just going to ask it. He sits on your board, Dr. Waitek Tai. Given your own past history and encryption, come back into the screen, Frank. Given your own past in encryption software, and obviously what he's doing is off the charts, and all you got to do is Google his name. Can I take a guess the kind of development you're referring to?
Well, like I said, we don't comment on rumor.
All right, I tried. That time I couldn't get it. I couldn't get it out. Richard, last point to you here. How is 2018 looking for Iconic? Because you too went through those difficult times as a company. Now you've got St. George, the great technology partner. How are things looking for you, and how much brighter are they today than they were just a little while ago?
A lot. All you have to do is look at the stock price. What this means is we can get back and define this resource properly, as well as start the process of getting it to production. So I'm very excited about the coming year. It's going to be a busy year, and hopefully we'll start seeing a lot more effort out there within the next month or so.
Gentlemen, I want to thank all of you. Enrico, thanks so much for all of your contribution as the metallurgy expert here. Unfortunately, we lost Katura to a technical glitch, so we couldn't have her chime in, but there'll be a lot of time to bring her back. It sounds like there's going to be a lot to talk about with both of you, with both your companies. But on behalf of everyone watching at home tonight, and they've been waiting for it, and we're going to edit this and get it out as fast as possible, I really want to thank you guys for taking the time. I mean, it's Boxing Day. Boxing Day is always a day where all of us in this industry just take the time off, and in fact, we're all at the offices getting this done. So I want to thank all of you, congratulate you all on the great 2017, and on behalf of everybody, wish you a fantastic 2018 for the benefit of not only yourselves, but all shareholders at home.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Richard.
You've been watching Frank Dumas and Enrico Di Cesare from St. George's Echo Mining Corp. And you've been watching Richard Kern from Iconic Minerals. I'll give you their stock symbols again for our friends in Canada. St. George's SX on the CSE, SXOOF in the US, and in Frankfurt, 85G1. Iconic in Canada is ICM on the Venture Exchange, BVTEF on the OTC, and in Frankfurt, YQGB. Do your due diligence. We've broken the door down for you and given you pretty cutting edge information here on Boxing Night. It's your deferred stocking stuffer. In fact, to me, it now looks like your deferred big Christmas present under the tree. So take advantage of today, and by all means, get back to Agoracom and ask any further questions you have, and we'll have more news for you on that and how Frank and the guys will be talking to you on Agoracom. But make sure you get your questions and stick with us. 2018 is going to be a lot of fun. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you, George.